I'm Hayley Strachan. I'm a director at Deloitte based in Aberdeen, although my role covers all of Scotland. And I am a graduate from Aberdeen University, having studied a Master's in Economic Science, graduating in 2002.
Thank you very much. Why did you choose to study at University of Aberdeen?
So I'm from Aberdeen originally, and I always knew that I was going to go to university. Didn't always know that that would be in Aberdeen. So when I finished school, my original plan actually was to travel before deciding what subjects I wanted to study, and which university I wanted to go to. For various reasons, due to an accident that I actually had at that time, it meant that I was unable to fulfill that immediately. And so what I actually did was decided to come to the University of Aberdeen and study actually maths and computer science. And I did that in 1999. It was when I did that. And so straight from school, I ended up coming to the University of Aberdeen to study the subjects that I had been good at school, more as a kind of I guess a knee-jerk reaction to a change in my personal circumstances that meant that I couldn't follow my original plan. And that first year was successful. I enjoyed the studies. I did really well at them. But I always knew that what I really wanted to do was to take some time, and travel and really decide on where I wanted to go. So after completing my first year, I actually then did take a year out, 2 years out, in fact. I took a year out to work to save some money to then fund my travels. So I eventually returned to Aberdeen, where, to my family home. And I had concluded during my travels that what I was interested in, was the world, the economy, international relations, politics, all of that. So what I actually did when I came back from my travels was to come to the University of Aberdeen to study economic science, but I also took, modules and electives in international relations and politics and history and statistics and, other subjects that were complementary and of interest to me. So I did that in 2002. Apologies. I actually graduated in 2006, and I came and did my 4 years. And at that point, if I'm honest, I came to the University of Aberdeen because, I returned from my travels with no money. And so studying at home was definitely the easiest option to follow. And of course, actually, with a bit of due diligence into the quality of the tuition in those subjects at Aberdeen, then I was comfortable that, Aberdeen gave me a really good opportunity in the subjects I wanted to study as well. So it wasn't only kind of convenient, but it was also a good choice.
Thank you very much. That's very interesting. What were some of your favorite memories from Aberdeen?
Ooh, I don't know that they're all positive, but they bring a smile to my face at least. I remember being exceptionally cold in some of the older buildings during lectures. I have such fond memories of the previous iteration of the campus library, the Queen Mother Library. Myself and my friends, we spent a lot of time in there studying, with periodic tea breaks, coffee breaks, that we would gather down in the foyer and kind of do that to break up the day. And I spent a lot of happy times in and around the library with my friends, but also studying. So yeah, they'd be maybe some of my memories.
That's very nice. Thank you. Did you participate in any student organization or societies?
Actually, yes, I did. Myself and some of my classmates, established the Economic Society.
Really?
Yeah, and as part of that, we traveled to Geneva and we visited the World Economic Forum,
Oh,
which was pretty incredible, actually. Yeah, that was in my last 2 years, my honors years, third and fourth year, that happened. So there was a small group of us, maybe, I don't know, 6 or 8 of us, who established the society. There was the account society, there was the law society, but we felt a little bit that there wasn't an economic society and there was something missing. So we set it up, and we had some socials, and it was quite a small group, because it just started. But we represented ourselves at the kind of the freshers fairs and things like that to try to get membership up. And then yeah, we did this trip, which was a really cool experience.
That's very impressive. That's very impressive. And what were your initial career aspirations while studying at University of Aberdeen? What did you want to do?
Yeah, no, good question. And I'm not sure that I really had a good answer at the time, because what I actually did after graduating from Aberdeen was I went on to study further at Edinburgh University on a 2-year postgraduate course, which was a master's in Chinese studies. So what, I mentioned earlier was that I was interested in, global economy, globalization, international relations, all of those kind of interesting things. But in particular, Asia and China were kind of a real strong personal interest. And I really, when I was at uni in Aberdeen, actually, I went to some Chinese language classes in the evenings in the language centre, and which is where I met one of my really good friends who remains a really great friend of mine to this day. So that was a nice present from the university as well. And so the interest in China, Chinese language and the economy had always been present. And so after I graduated from my economic science course, I explored options in postgraduates that might be interesting to me. I still didn't have too much of a clear idea about what I wanted to do career-wise, but I felt quite passionate about and interested in China and the Chinese language. So I found this course, which was 2-year masters, primarily to do the study of Mandarin, which included a 6 months over in China, attending a university there to improve the language skills, but also taking electives in things like political economy and arts and literature in China, film studies and things like that, just to get a real broad understanding of China and the whole cultural and economic landscape out there. So it was really after that that I started to have a clearer idea about what I wanted to do career-wise, because what I wanted to try and do was to combine my interest in business, economy, the world, with a bit of an interest in China. And that led me to the graduate role that I applied for at Deloitte, actually. So I've been with Deloitte for 16 years, from graduate all the way through to where I am now. And that was driven by the fact that Deloitte have a China services group.
Mhm.
So a part of the business is really interested in China and supporting businesses between the UK and China, and moving people globally to do that. And that was the part of the business that I applied for. So I work today in the same team, which is global employer services, dealing with the mobility of individuals, employees that are needed to work across the world.
That's very interesting and unique. Thank you. What did you enjoy the most about studying economic science?
Um,
And would you
I
recommend it to students?
Would I recommend it? Yes, I would. What did I enjoy about it? I mean, coming from, my background, what I had been good at school, and coming to study maths at Aberdeen, that the first time I joined the university, I had a strong background in maths, which obviously there's a big underpinning of economic science there, and I would hesitate to say that I particularly enjoyed econometrics. That was a bit of a tough one as a course, but I really enjoyed the connection into maths. But then I also enjoyed the application of economic science in the real world. And thinking about books like economics and things like that have come out since. That's really interesting. That application of the theory in the real world was what I found really interesting. And I would definitely recommend it, for those reasons, that, it's not all theory, that there is, some real practical application. And when you think about it, it's everywhere.
Thank you. And what factors, in your opinion, contributed to your success at Deloitte?
Sure. So I think actually it comes down to, well, a few things, but primarily the fact that I took some time out before deciding to study, that when I studied, I was sure about the subjects that I was interested in, and that I took the time to understand the type of career I was interested in, something in business, what were the kind of, I guess, features of the type of business that I wanted to work for, what were the features of the type of work I wanted to do. And having some clarity on that, I think, meant that when I came into the business and into the team, I was really committed to it, that I felt like I was really ready to, put a lot of effort into my professional career. I had, personal private time to travel and to have experiences and things like that, which meant that, when I committed to my career choices, I was really able to be very committed. And I think that maybe some additional life experience also stood me in quite good stead coming into a professional environment and needing to communicate and to operate, in a professional way. So I think that really helped me, particularly in the early years of my career.
Yes, thank you. And how did particular degree in economic science help you in your career?
So again, I think that maybe some of that application skills, applying theory to actual problems, to real world. I think because when I joined Deloitte, I had no technical background in tax, in mobility, in the work that I do today. And so I think that openness to learning and then applying that learning to real world problems is the job that we do, right? So you can take the tax legislation and then you can speak to a client and, they'll have a problem that they're looking for you to solve or advise on. And you need to marry up the reality of the real world situation with the tax legislation and provide a practical kind of answer. And so I think that some of that problem solving, skills and so I guess some of the numeracy skills and things like that, just understanding information and being able to, process it through, thought processes and rule sets and things like that to be able to provide an answer on the other side.
Thank you very much. Are there any professional qualifications that you have, and do you think they're important for your type of career?
Yeah, so actually, yes, I studied ATT, which is the Association of Taxation Technicians. And I also have a Chartered Tax Advisor status, which, so two qualifications that I studied through my career. And they are definitely, they have a place, because it gives you a benchmark of knowledge acquisition to make sure that you have studied to a level, a broad base of tax technical knowledge. So yeah, I think they remain important, definitely. I think that some of the application skills that I mentioned already are particularly developed through the study of the Chartered Tax Advisor qualification in particular. Because it moves you on from ATT level. The first level is perhaps more calculation based, pro forma calculations and being able to extract the right information and process it appropriately. Whereas the second qualification is more around doing that, but building on, a more holistic kind of advice answer as opposed to just crunching numbers.
Thank you. How in general, Deloitte changed since you joined it?
Oh, massively. I mean, the world has changed. I've changed, the tax landscape has changed, the business landscape has changed, the economic environment's changed, the political environment's changed, social environment's changed, after COVID and, so the expectations of employees, which is ultimately what the business I work in is about, moving people around the world. So how do you, attract talent to do that, retain your talent, and then deploy them effectively? The demands of the business and the demands of employees have changed totally. So I guess, in terms of Deloitte, it's been impacted by all of that technology. My God, I can't even, definitely not mention that, and more recently with AI. So the services that we deliver, the way that we do it, who we do it with, like, all of that has changed so much during my career. If I think back to the job that I applied for and the job that I started in, it looks very different to the job that a graduate would come into now, and definitely I would argue for the better, because there were certain administrative elements to what I did back, that we still had paper files, for example, and that it was that long ago that it wasn't all electronic storage. So the world looks very different, and I think that graduates joining us today, come into and become, there's much less administrative elements to the job, put it like that, from what I started with.
Thank you very much. What is your advice for students who are trying to get internships, and are they important in your opinion?
Yeah, I think internships can be really good, actually, because it gives you some experience. It gives you more insight into the job that you're applying for, because it can be so abstract, right? When you look at a job description and you look at a company, to try to research and prepare for an interview, it can be really hard to understand what the reality of the actual job is, and the reality of what that can lead to. So I think something like an internship can be really good, because it allows you to see how you like the professional environment. Do you like do you like the culture in the company? Do you like the reality of the role that you would be coming in to do? Is it a good fit for you as much as are you a good fit for the company? Because that's really important. So I think that internships give you an opportunity to have more insight and make a more well-informed choice when it comes to what you ultimately go and do for your first role outside of university. What would what tips or recommendations would I give people to do that? I think just if you are going to pursue an internship, then just be really open to all of the experiences that you can get through that. Because they can be really valuable. So just keep your eyes open and don't say no to anything. Just to get as much kind of insight and as experience as you can in that short period of time.
Thank you very much. And the next question is, for example, for students who are considering Deloitte to work there in the future, yes, what departments does Deloitte have? For example, human resources, taxation department, accountancy, etc., etc.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're a professional services firm. So I would suggest anybody who's interested in, in looking at Deloitte as a career option, just goes to the website, basically, because it's all laid out there, in terms of the service lines that we have and the functions that we have and how it's all organized. So yeah, or come along to some of the events, because we're always at the careers fairs, or we have some of our own events running. So there's lots of opportunity to hear directly from Deloitte about that rather than me.
Thank you. So what does it take to succeed in your field?
Oh, I think, and this is something I do say to my colleagues and people who join my team, curiosity is really a big thing. Whether that's curiosity towards the tax technical elements of the job, whether it's curiosity towards your colleagues and just being connected, a good team player, and supporting each other. Curiosity perhaps just about the external world, the whole business environment, because it helps you to bring insight and understand context. Curiosity towards particular businesses and clients that you're working with, and I mean curiosity towards the business that client represents, but also curiosity towards the client as an individual. So being interested in people, being connected, using all of the pieces of information that you've gathered through being curious to then be a really helpful partner to your clients, whether that's your client's business or your client as a person. That's the kind of thing that I think makes a big difference, and something that I try to maintain, because you never stop learning. There's always more to know and develop, so that retaining that sense of curiosity, I think, is really important.
Thank you very much. Lots of students struggling with stress during their studies. What would you recommend to deal with that? What advice would you give to students?
Yeah, good question. Um, I would say try to get to know yourself. So try to understand what your triggers are, so that you can identify when that situation is arising as early as possible and take some intervention action. If you do get into that type of situation where you are feeling a bit stressed, I think it's good if you're able to see it coming, than that before it really hits. Like that's always slightly easier. And then from a more perhaps a proactive point of view, establishing lots of good practices in terms of finding things that keep you balanced. Because it's always a sliding scale. Sometimes we're more resilient, sometimes we're less resilient, sometimes that you've just got more capacity than others on any given day. So trying to find activities that give you, that there's always going to be things in life that you have to do that you don't enjoy or that are maybe more challenging and potentially, stress creating, but trying to find where the balance is between doing enough of the things that make you feel like that and enough of the things that actually are then relievers or give you energy or bring you more joy and things like that to try to, make sure that it's a nice even picture. I think that's, for me, physical activity, for used to do an awful lot more running, cycling, things like that. Now I do kind of more yoga and a bit of paddleboarding and things like that. It's important to me to be outside, to be active. Those are things that are important in my life to help me manage. So finding what that is for you and making sure that you stick to it.
Thank you very much. A lot of students struggling with transition from academia to professional world. What advice would you give to students who struggling with it?
Yeah. I had a number of part-time jobs all through my studies. And I think that was really important because it meant that I was great at managing time. And also I was used to being, a degree of responsibility. I was in the same job all the way through my university career. So progressed actually to a supervisory role in that job, just a part-time job, but still gave me some responsibility, taught me about working in a team, in a professional environment where you have to be there, and managing the requirements of that at the same time as having a life and is at the same time as keeping fit and is at the same time as doing all my studies. Those are the skills I think that stand you in really good stead when you come into a career, a professional environment, because those are some of the things that can be most challenging when you first, come into it, to try to understand how to balance the various parts of your life and to help with prioritizing work. I think I think so for me, it was very helpful having had, part-time job. And I understand that's not for everyone, not necessary for everyone or not helpful. But for me personally, as a reflection, I think that prepared me well for when I then, came into my career.
Thank you very much. And another question is, you mentioned that you deal a lot with people within your organization, yes? What advice would you give to students who are interested in human resources and other careers which require you to deal with a lot of people within the organization? What advice would you give?
So I, again, coming back to my kind of curiosity point, I think that it's important to remember that everyone's a person. And so I think being human is really important, no matter almost what job you do, but in particular, if your job is more people focused. And that might seem like a really simple, kind of silly thing to say, but it's amazing how you can become, everyone's got the same underlying human challenges, right? So I think if you can try to understand what's motivating that other person and try to understand what might be challenging that other person, understanding how that other person likes to be communicated with, do they want, lots of FaceTime? Do they prefer kind of, more brief communication? Trying to individualize how you behave, and adapt to the other individuals in your environment. I think all of that is really important in any interactions you're having with people, because that enables you to make much more of an impact and be more helpful, and be more valued, by those people, which is ultimately what is really helpful to, productive business relationships are all underpinned by, really strong human relationships. So I think that that would be my tip. Don't get blindsided by somebody's in a really senior, important role. You know, they're a person at the end of the day and they have priorities and challenges and interests and things like that. So I think if you can get to the heart of that, you become much more helpful to them.
Thank you very much. And the last question is, if you could go back in time, would you change anything about your experiences as students, and or would you give yourself any advice?
Oh, wow, would I? Um, yes, I think I probably would. I think I got it slightly the wrong way around in terms of in my first and second year, I was a very serious student and perhaps not as social and perhaps was over reliant on the fact that I lived at home and had an existing Aberdeen network. You know, because I was from here originally, I had other friends before going to university, which I think maybe meant I didn't throw myself into all the social areas and the networks at university in the same way that I perhaps would go back and change it, you know. Whereas by the time third and fourth year came around, I was much more settled at uni, and you know, some of those relationships had just grown despite me not, you know, really throwing myself in. You know, we'd known each other, you know, a few more years by this point, and so, you know, some social networks kind of grew out a little bit there. And I maybe you know, was slightly too social in third and fourth year. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was still academically successful and I was still working my part-time jobs and I was still, you know, keeping myself fit and things like that. But I might have got the balance the wrong way around. Maybe I would have maybe, you know, done more on the social side in the early years and then kind of, you know, reduced that down in the second years. But, or maybe not, maybe I would have just maintained it. But I think that the piece I would change is the first 2 years. I would have thrown myself into more of what university had to offer in all of its different ways, whether that's the different networks, you know, the sports teams, like the facilities, just all of it. You know, I would find myself, because I did have an existing Aberdeen network and I did have my part-time job and I did have my sports interests outside of university, I would find myself leaving campus almost immediately after lectures had ended, and you know, and had a whole external life to what happened at uni. And I don't think I maximized kind of the you know, the opportunities or the social side of actually my student experience. So that's the part I would go back and change. I worked super hard on the academic stuff, so I don't have any regrets on that.